A happy family, a husband, a wife, 2 children, a life built together. But within those walls, betrayal, anger, fear, and an evening in June when it all shattered. This is the story of the Zakrzewski family murders, Mary Esther, Florida, where on June 9, 1994, love turned to violence and a father's worst fears became his horror. Edward James Zakrzewski II was a technical sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. Originally from Michigan, he had married Sylvia, born Punim, who was South Korean. In 1986, they met in Montana, started their life together, had 2 children, Edward III, 7, and Anna, 5. In 1992, after Edward's posting transferred, the family moved to Mary Esther in Okaloosa County, Florida. Over time, marital tension built. Arguments, cultural pressures, disagreements. Sylvia faced discrimination in South Korea for being married to an American and having mixed-race children. Their relationship suffered under weight of fear, resentment, and looming decisions. On June 9, 1994, Sylvia decided she couldn't continue living like this. She wanted a divorce and to take the children to South Korea. That decision ignited something in Edward. According to court documents, Edward called in to work that morning. During his lunch break, he purchased a machete. He returned to work, went through daily routine. Little did anyone suspect what he was assembling, invisibly, mentally, and physically preparing. That evening, Sylvia and the children returned home. Edward had hidden the machete behind the bathroom door. Also in his arsenal, a crowbar and rope. First, he attacked Sylvia in the living room. Multiple blows from the crowbar, then used the rope to strangle her. But that was only the beginning. Edward called Edward III, his son, into the bathroom under the guise of brushing his teeth. He struck him repeatedly with the machete. Then Anna, his daughter, called similarly, and she too was killed in similar fashion. Post-mortem showed defensive wounds on both children, indicating they tried to protect themselves. Even after the children were dead, Edward noticed Sylvia might have still been alive. He dragged her body into the bathroom and delivered multiple machete blows to ensure she would not survive. Her death came from both blunt force, crowbar, and sharp force, machete trauma. She had a fractured skull, several machete slashes, and was strangled. After the murders, Edward didn't turn himself in. Instead, he fled, got a flight to Hawaii. There, he changed his name, reportedly to Michael Green, and lived in a Christian commune on the island of Molokai. But authorities were closing in. The case was featured on the television show Unsolved Mysteries about 4 months after the murders. Presbyterian church group members and ministers recognized Edward from the show. Under pressure and unable to keep hiding, he surrendered to authorities in Hawaii on October 15, 1994. He was then extradited to Florida to face charges. Zakrzewski pleaded guilty to the 3 counts of first-degree murder on March 19, 1996. The trial moved into penalty phase. The state argued for death sentences for all 3 murders. The defense argued that Zakrzewski was under severe emotional distress, driven by fear of divorce, of cultural rejection, and the belief that his children would suffer because they were of mixed race. Jury votes were split. For Sylvia and Edward III, 7-5 in favor of death. For Anna, the vote was 6-6. Half the jury favored life. But the judge overrode and imposed the death sentence anyway. On April 19, 1996, Zakrzewski was formally sentenced to death for all 3 murders. Zakrzewski spent decades on death row. Over the years, multiple appeals were filed, arguing mental health, emotional disturbance, sentencing issues. The Florida Supreme Court and U.S. courts reviewed, but in each case, his convictions and death sentences were upheld. In recent years, the case came back into national attention as Florida reached a record number of executions in a year. Zakrzewski became the 9th person executed in Florida in 2025. On July 31st, 2025, at age 60, Edward James Zakrzewski II was executed by lethal injection. 3 lives, a mother, a son, a daughter, all taken in the echo of domestic pain, fear, and cultural pressure. What makes this case especially chilling is how premeditated it was. Zakrzewski's day was planned, weapons purchased, hiding places prepared, all before the family came home. For years, his own defense claimed emotional distress, but the evidence showed calculation, coldness, and for many, this case is a warning. Love can fracture, and vengeance can be born from fear. Sylvia, Edward III, Anna, they deserve to be remembered not just as victims, but as people, as a family. If you believe their story matters, leave a comment below. What lesson do you take from this tragedy? Would you have recognized the warning signs? Subscribe to The Silent Evidence, where we uncover the lost, the silenced, and the erased. Hit the bell icon so their stories are never forgotten.